There are songs you can perform for a lifetime without ever truly hearing them, until one day they hit differently. For Barry Gibb, that day came long after the applause had faded and the lights dimmed. He can still walk onto a stage, still smile for the fans, still sing the harmonies that defined generations. But there's one song he avoids, not because of fame, not because of charts, but because of the ghosts that live inside it. Every time that melody begins, he feels the weight of everything he's lost, and for a moment, the legend who outlived his brothers stops being a performer and becomes a man remembering what can never return. The last Bee Gee standing. Barry Gibb is 78 years old now. His voice has softened, but the falsetto remains unmistakable. When he steps into a concert hall, the crowd still rises for the last surviving Bee Gee. Yet behind the cheers is a silence only he can hear. The story of Barry's life isn't just about music, it's about survival. The Bee Gees weren't simply a band, they were brothers. Barry, Robin, Maurice, and Andy Gibb. Together, they created a sound that changed the world, selling over 220 million records, shaping pop, soul, and disco across decades. But fame has a cruel rhythm, and one by one, the harmony fell apart. Andy, the youngest, was the first to go. He had everything, a golden voice, charisma, and the last name Gibb. But success came too fast. By 1978, shadow dancing held the number. One spot for 7 weeks, written and produced by Barry himself. Andy was just 20, living every dream his brothers had fought for. Yet, by his late 20s, he was drowning in addiction and depression, battling to meet expectations that fame had inflated beyond reach. Barry tried to help, sending him to rehab, guiding him through comebacks, but nothing lasted. On March 10, 1988, just 5 days after his 30th birthday, Andy Gibb died from myocarditis, worsened by years of substance abuse. Barry delivered the eulogy, but the words barely came out. He later said that losing Andy was the hardest because it was preventable. Since that day, he has rarely performed Andy's songs. Friends say there is one tape, a demo Andy recorded in 1987, that Barry kept hidden ever since. No title, no lyrics ever released. Maybe it was Andy's farewell to his brother. Maybe it was a cry for help. Whatever was on that tape, Barry never shared it, and perhaps he never will. The rumored demo and the burden of memory. After Andy's death in 1988, Barry Gibb withdrew from the spotlight. He focused on his family, wrote for other artists, and tried to fill his days with work. But the silence between songs had changed. For years, whispers circulated among producers and close friends about a lost recording, a final demo Andy Gibb supposedly made months before his death. According to several biographers, Andy had been in the studio during his last attempts at recovery, recording raw acoustic tracks meant to rebuild his confidence. They weren't hits, they were personal, and one, insiders claim, was handed directly to Barry. The story goes that the song was recorded in a quiet Miami studio in late 1987. Andy's voice was thinner, softer, nothing like the pop idol fans remembered. But there was honesty in it. He was, as one engineer described, trying to tell his brother something. That tape, if it still exists, remains locked away. Barry has never confirmed it publicly, and maybe he doesn't have to. Because every time he's asked about Andy, his voice catches, his words shorten, and he says the same thing. I wonder if I could have done more. That line, repeated in interviews across decades, is as close as he's ever come to admitting guilt. Those who knew the family well believe Barry has listened to the demo in private, on Andy's birthday or the anniversary of his death, just to hear that unguarded voice again. Not the superstar, but the little brother he grew up protecting. It's not difficult to imagine why he's kept it hidden. Some songs aren't meant for the world. They're too raw, too unfinished, too close to the wound. For Barry, that demo isn't just a recording. It's a reminder of the moment everything changed. It's what he couldn't save. The Bee Gees kept going after Andy's death, writing, recording, performing. But something in Barry's tone was different. Beneath every lyric was a trace of exhaustion, a quiet ache that never left. He once said, "When you lose your brothers, you don't just lose your past, you lose your sound." That loss would deepen over the next 20 years. Immortality, the song that changed. Meaning forever. By the mid-1990s, the Bee Gees had nothing left to prove. They had survived the disco backlash, reinvented themselves, and were celebrated as living legends. When Celine Dion's team reached out in 1997, asking the brothers to write a song for her next album, it was supposed to be a simple collaboration, another feather in a crown already overflowing with hits. Barry, Robin, and Maurice sat together in Miami, surrounded by instruments and old memories, and wrote Immortality. At first, it wasn't meant to be sad. It was about endurance, legacy, the idea that love and dreams could outlive the body. They recorded the backing vocals themselves, layering their harmonies beneath Celine's powerful voice. To the world, it was just another Bee Gees masterpiece, elegant, timeless, emotionally rich. But to Barry, it would later become something else entirely. Because a few years after the song's release, those harmonies, the ones recorded so effortlessly, became the only way to hear his brothers again. On January 12, 2003, tragedy struck. Maurice Gibb, the quiet force and peacemaker of the group, died suddenly from complications during abdominal surgery. He was only 53. To Barry, Maurice wasn't just a bandmate. He was the glue that held everything together, the arranger, the multi-instrumentalist, the man who steadied the chaos between two strong-willed brothers. His death shattered Barry's sense of balance. He and Robin tried to keep working, but the chemistry was gone. The laughter that once filled studio sessions had vanished. That's when Immortality began to sound different. Barry couldn't listen without feeling the lyrics hit somewhere deeper. So this is who I am, and this is all I know. What once felt like poetry now sounded like prophecy. Then, in 2012, the final blow came. Robin Gibb, Barry's lifelong musical twin, died after a long battle with cancer. The bond that had shaped their childhood harmonies was broken forever. At tribute concerts that followed, Barry stood alone on stage to perform Immortality, backed only by recordings of Maurice and Robin's voices. He wasn't performing anymore. He was communing. When he reached the line, "We don't say goodbye," he didn't have to explain. The audience already knew this wasn't just a lyric. It was a vow not to let go. In interviews years later, Barry admitted that Immortality still makes him cry, not because of its fame, but because, in his words, "I still hear them when I sing." Every performance is both a tribute and a reminder. For a few minutes, the harmonies return, and when the song ends, they're gone again. I Started a Joke. The song that became a farewell. Long before the Bee Gees conquered disco floors and stadium stages, their music carried a haunting tenderness. In 1968, Robin Gibb stepped into the spotlight with a song that would later come to define both his artistry and Barry's grief, I Started a Joke. It wasn't their biggest hit at the time, but it was different. The song's melancholy, its strange blend of confession and irony, struck listeners even then. No one really knew what it meant. Some said it was spiritual, others thought it was about guilt or rebirth. Robin never explained, and he didn't need to. The emotion spoke for itself. I started a joke which started the whole world crying, but I didn't see that the joke was on me. Decades later, that lyric took on new weight. When Robin died in 2012, Barry began performing I Started a Joke alone, not as a chart-topping classic, but as a kind of living eulogy. During those performances, he would stand under soft blue lights with his guitar, singing his brother's words without the harmonies that once framed them. For the first time, the audience could see past the legend. They saw a man trying to keep a promise, to carry a voice that wasn't his anymore. People who attended those concerts described them as almost sacred. Barry's voice would tremble. Sometimes he couldn't finish the song. It wasn't about stagecraft or perfection. It was about memory. He once said, "When I sing Robin's songs, I feel like I'm borrowing his soul." Every word in "I Started a Joke" had turned into something literal. The Bee Gees were often ridiculed for their falsetto, their glittering outfits, their association with disco. But when Barry sang that lyric, "But I didn't see that the joke was on me," it sounded like an admission that the world had misunderstood what the Bee Gees truly were. They weren't caricatures. They were brothers who built a world of sound out of love and pain. Over time, the song became something else entirely, a final conversation between the living and the lost. Each performance felt like Barry speaking directly to Robin, not the crowd. Fans could feel it too. One reviewer called it the most honest 3 minutes in modern music. In that moment, the Bee Gees' story wasn't about fame or tragedy anymore. It was about the simple, human ache of outliving everyone who ever sang beside you. To love somebody, the brother he couldn't save. In 1967, when the Bee Gees wrote "To Love Somebody," it wasn't meant to be a sad song. It was supposed to be soulful, a heartfelt ballad written for Otis Redding, who tragically died before he could record it. The song went on to become one of the Bee Gees' early triumphs, carried by Barry's raw, yearning voice. It spoke of longing, devotion, and the kind of love that hurts quietly. "You don't know what it's like," the lyrics plead, "to love somebody the way I love you." At the time, it was simply about romance. Decades later, it would mean something else entirely. A conversation across life and death between Barry and his youngest brother, Andy. Andy had always looked up to Barry. More than a mentor, Barry was the guiding hand that shaped Andy's career. He wrote Shadow Dancing, produced I Just Want to Be Your Everything, and cheered his little brother through every hit. But behind the success, Andy struggled. He was barely out of his teens when fame swallowed him whole, the pressure, the loneliness, the addictions. Barry saw the signs. He tried to step in, to help, but fame doesn't make room for healing. When Andy died at just 30, Barry was left with more than grief. He was left with guilt. "I didn't know how to be what he needed," he once admitted. Over the years, "To Love Somebody" became the song Barry found hardest to perform. It wasn't written for Andy, yet every word now belonged to him. When Barry sings it today, his tone changes. Slower, softer, weighted. Audience members have described the shift, the brief pause before the first note, the look upward as if searching for someone in the wings, the fragile tremor when he reaches the line, "You don't know what it's like." Because Andy didn't know. He never believed he deserved the love he was given, from fans, from family, or even from Barry himself. That's what makes the song so powerful now. It's no longer a love song in the romantic sense. It's an apology. It's Barry saying what he never had the chance to say when Andy was alive. The refrain, "To love somebody," isn't a declaration anymore. It's a confession of helplessness. And for Barry, it's a way of keeping Andy close without reopening the wound. Every time he performs it, he's not just remembering a brother. He's forgiving himself. The silence that speaks louder. For more than 6 decades, Barry Gibb has lived surrounded by sound. Studio sessions, world tours, applause that lasted long after the final note. But these days, it's the silence that defines him. In interviews, when asked about his brothers, there's always a pause. It's not hesitation, it's memory. A kind of silence that only someone who has outlived their harmony can understand. He has said many times that he still hears them, not metaphorically, but in a very real way. "I still wait for their voices," he told The Guardian in 2021. During rehearsals, he often turned slightly, as if expecting Robin or Maurice to join in on a line. Old habits die hard when they're built on a lifetime of brotherhood. The Bee Gees were more than music. They were communication. They finished each other's thoughts in melody and lyric. And now Barry stands on stage with that instinct intact. Only there's no answer. The harmonies never come. That is the quiet tragedy behind the legend. The world sees the gold records, the awards, the knighthood, but few see the cost. To be the last Bee Gee isn't an honor in Barry's eyes. It's a sentence. The applause that once felt like validation now echoes with absence. "It's a strange feeling," he once said, "to have all the memories and no one left to share them with." At 78, Barry still performs, not because he has to, but because it's the only language he has left. Music is how he speaks to the past. Some songs, like Immortality, he sings through tears. Others, like To Love Somebody, he barely touches anymore. And then there are songs he never plays at all, the ones that belong only to him and the brothers who are gone. Perhaps that rumored Andy Gibb demo still exists somewhere, sealed in a drawer, waiting. Perhaps it doesn't. In the end, it doesn't matter. Because every time Barry steps up to a microphone, you can hear it. That same unspoken dialogue between life and loss, love and survival. He once said, "We were 4 boys who just wanted to sing together." Everything after that was a miracle. And a price. Maybe that's why he never revealed which song breaks him the most, because the truth is, it isn't one song, it's all of them. Every lyric, every chord, every harmony is a conversation he can no longer have. And still, he sings because silence, for Barry Gibb, would be the real goodbye. Which Bee Gees song do you think carries the most emotion for Barry? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories about legends whose music hides deeper truths, don't forget to subscribe to Retro Waves, where every note tells a story that time can't erase.